Welcome to the Zayari Wellness Podcast, where we learn about other people's journeys. Regardless of age, race, religion, or status, we're all just human and have one thing in common: the ups and downs of life. Join me in welcoming our special guest, Luz, as we explore Kallmann Syndrome.
My name is Luz. I am from Puerto Rico. I am 29 years old. And yes, I think it's, very important to talk about this syndrome. It is very rare. Not a lot of people have it. So I feel like, to raise awareness, because, I've come across some groups on Facebook because I kind of wanted to connect. I've never met anybody with what I have. So, um, psychologically, I mean, it could affect since you're like, nobody else has it. So maybe there's some people out there that, may have it and they just don't know. So I kind of wanted to, talk about it and see if, anybody can experience and any questions or anything like that, they might be experiencing.
Yeah. So when you have a rare syndrome, I think a lot of what you talk about is feeling isolated and alone in your struggle, because other people don't understand the uniqueness of it, or may have some misconceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that I wanted to open this platform up to create that sense of awareness, to create a community for people, so they don't feel alone. And so can
Mm-hmm.
you help the audience understand what is Kallman syndrome?
Yeah, so Kallman syndrome in short term is delayed puberty. So pretty much you don't have you don't go through the puberty stage pretty much. You kind of notice some certain things that you may notice. Like in my case was I didn't have physically it looked like I had not gone through the puberty stage. Like I didn't have any breast. I didn't have like pubic hair underneath my armpits or in my private area. Height wise, I was short. Let's see what else. That's pretty much body wise. It just looked like I was younger than what I am. I've always been told, I look young for my age. I'm 29. Some people have, you look like you're 15,
Yeah.
12. I'm like, not even close, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, in one way, it's a good thing, right? Because you keep your beauty,
Yeah.
right? And in
I
other
mean, it's good.
ways,
It's good to look young, but sometimes in certain things, I've seen that maybe it might affect me, like in jobs or
Mhm.
sometimes in relationships. Some people just, they don't approach me because they think I was little, I was young, I was underage.
Yeah.
Another thing too that I didn't, I don't know how to explain. I didn't notice it in the beginning was sense of smell. In my
Mm.
case, I don't have no sense of smell at all. But in Kallman syndrome, you either have you don't have complete sense of smell, or you have partial where you can pick up certain smells. In my case, unfortunately, I don't have a sense of smell.
Yeah.
Um, so, which is kind of weird. Like you wouldn't think to connect that with that, but so that was one big thing. Um, and so I can say that with that syndrome, in my aspect, something that I struggled, mentally was the fact of, I didn't feel like I was like other girls. A lot of
Mhm.
people in my family, uh, they are, they got a figure to them.
Yeah.
They're curvy,
Mhm.
Hispanics, curvy.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
uh, also too, when I was in middle school, you start to develop. I was seeing, friends, girls around me, developing, and so I'm like, okay. Some people are like, oh, maybe it's just late bloomer. That's what the doctors thought at first too.
Mhm.
Um, so when I went to high school, I was diagnosed when I was in ninth grade. So
Right.
um, at first, the doctors were like, "Oh, maybe when you hit this age, then come to us if you because I didn't have a period either. So they were like, oh, if you don't have it till this age, then come ahead. I think if I would have been diagnosed earlier, maybe it would have been better, because
Mhm.
normally somebody starts developing maybe, I mean, nowadays it's like, 11, 12 years old. So I
Right.
got diagnosed pretty late.
Hmm.
So um so mentally I was just like, I feel different. Like, why do I look the way I look? And, other people around me, why am I different?
Yeah.
Um so I
Yeah.
just felt, out of place pretty much.
Yeah, and it kind of like there's such a unique struggle because like for those who don't know, so I know Luz personally, and if you're comfortable with me sharing that,
Yeah.
Luz is my cousin, and we are like cousins on both sides of the family, no incest. Like every time I say that, people are like, "What do you mean?" Well, my dad and her dad are cousins, and my mom and her mom are sisters. And so Luz was like a sister growing up. And as we grew up, like I am curvy, right? And like we hung out all the time together. And so I like wouldn't have known that, like, oh, like the way I look impacts like how you feel about yourself because,
Hmm.
you are going through these unique things because of the syndrome that, hey, like, why don't I like, and I think we all compare ourselves no matter how old we are. We compare like what we look
Hmm.
like and, circle of it, whatever it is. But can you share a little bit more about like being in a Hispanic family? Like, oh, like you're supposed to look a certain way as a woman,
Yeah.
or you're supposed to, meet certain
Hmm.
milestones, and then you have that cultural impact of like this, and then you don't meet that expectation per se. So like share a little bit how that
Yeah.
impacted you or
Yeah, like I said, yeah, and Hispanic culture is like, oh, you're supposed to be like, not in my particular family, that they're like, oh, you're supposed to be curvy. No, I'm just saying, like, in society, some people be like, oh, if you're Hispanic, you're supposed to be like this. If African American, you're supposed to be like this. Like, no, physically, like, everybody's who they are.
yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're Hispanic or your body, how you're born and how your body is just how you are. um I just don't think that people should be like, oh, because you're a certain culture, you're supposed to be act or physically look like this. No, I don't
Mhm.
believe in that. I mean, if they decide to um do stuff like that to themselves because they want to be curvy or whatever, then that's on them. But me personally, like, opinion wise, I don't think that people should use phrases like that way. You don't never know what the person goes through in their life.
Yeah,
uh
absolutely. And I kind of want to highlight that as a woman, like you mentioned that some guys wouldn't approach you because you looked young or, what have you. And so
mhm.
um Luz is married, right? Like she is in a
Yes.
relationship, she's happy. But like I want you to like kind of like elaborate on that a little bit because we have again the cultural like as a woman, these are what makes a woman desirable. And a lot of the times it is like, oh, does she, the
Yeah.
first thing people look at, like, is she cute? Does she have a booty? Right? Like, or does she
Yeah.
have boobs? Or like, and hormones play a part in that. Like, hormones play a part in the development. And having a syndrome that like blocks your hormones and blocks your body from doing what is
Hmm.
expected, right? Like, can you share about it a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, certainly, uh, a lot of my mentality, um I did struggle because when I was in high school, throughout my high school um phase, I will see people. I heard people all the time. I mean, they're like, oh, the guys specifically, they'll I hear their conversations like, oh, I'm not gonna date her because she doesn't have boobs, or I'm not gonna date her because she doesn't have a booty. The person could be great. Like, I'm like, why is people looking at the physical aspect and not who the person is?
Hmm.
um, on a personal level, in my point of view, I was look at the person's personality more than their look. I've met people that are very good looking and their personality is not good. So growing up, me going through this phase of trying to figure out why did I feel different. I mean, not being, normal per se. I always thought about it like, dang, like, am I gonna find somebody? Like, because everywhere that I turn, everybody's looking at, body wise, like, oh my god, like that girl's hot because she has a booty, and then I'm just like, well, I don't have a booty, and then, big boobs, like I don't have big boobs, like, so um, curvy, I'm like, I'm not curvy at all. I'm like super skinny. Like that was one thing. I was like super skinny. Like I said, I didn't have breasts at all, like no
Mhm.
booty at all, because again, I wasn't in that puberty stage where you're supposed to be developing.
Mhm.
So, like I said, mentally it was very uh, scarring for say, because I would be down on myself, like, I'm
Yeah.
not pretty enough, maybe I'm not good enough for somebody. Are they gonna accept me? Even before I knew, but once I did find out, it was more like dang, like, it's are they gonna accept me with this?
Yeah.
Because I had to go through a whole process uh, that I had to go through because of that syndrome. So I had to take this hormone so that it can pretty much sped up, making it look like I went through the puberty stage. So uh, it's kind of rough on me at first, because like even the doctors explain, because when you're putting something that you didn't have, um, and taking that hormone, it sped up the process. So it was like hormonal, body wise, like it was like all over the place. Like sometimes, you know, um, I wasn't a person to get mad. The hormone, like there was things that annoyed me very easily, and I'm like kind of, this is kind of weird. It's like, is this what it's supposed to be? I mean, since I never experienced it, so and you never notice, like people that go through the period say that's a stage, but because mine was like in a fast pace,
Mhm.
um it was like my body was sore, and then
Mhm.
and the doctor explained this, then it explained the hormonal part. Hey, you may experience mood swings, not,
Mhm.
it's not your fault, it's the medication. And so
Mhm.
it was kind of rough that at first, but as I went on, it was simple. I mean, I grew a little bit height wise. I started to gain some weight, which was part of the puberty stage, I guess. So I was happy about that, because literally that was another thing. I had to be shopping like little kids area, and I was a teenager. That was
Yeah.
another thing. Like, say I was
Yeah.
at the store, I'm like, I want to wear like adult clothing, like teenage
Mhm.
clothing. I have to be
Mhm.
shopping in the kids section. I'm like, I'm not a kid. I'm an adult already. Or
Yeah.
I was a teen. So psychologically, I'm like, why do I have to be in the kids section? Like,
Yeah.
so that was another
So
thing too.
I
And
kind of want to highlight that too. Like, you talked about looking a certain way and also like, you know, the pressures of like, oh, I am not like curvy, right? Like I have these mood swings because medically, right? Like I need this to get to a certain place, right? So like I couldn't
Mhm.
grow. I don't think people like understand the impact that has on even like on family dynamics, because it's like, no, you should be here, right? Or like you
Yeah,
should be at a certain point, but you're not. And it's not your fault that you're not. So can you
yeah,
talk about sometimes like how even like the expectations, like for growing up, like we can always say, and I forget sometimes too, like, and I'm like, hey, Luce, can you smell this perfume? And then I have to catch myself, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's maybe something small, right? But to us, but like to you, like what are some real fears, like some real things you have like growing up, some that cause
yeah,
like barriers?
yeah. Like, to this day, I've been dealing with this since I was I was ninth grade. So I was maybe like 14, 15 years old. Um, I was my like my grandmother first say, like, she sometimes forgets, like, say, like, you sometimes you may forget. People forget. It's something not normal that that you can't smell. So people just forget. I mean, right, for me, like, the no smelling part, I mean, um I don't mind it, because it's like, it's a natural thing for somebody to be like, hey, smell good, or does this smell good. um I sometimes feel like, say, when people come over my house or something, I wouldn't know, like, does my house smell good? Of course my husband could
Mhm.
say, but you know but say something like I'm by myself, and somebody might come over and they'd be like, uh hey, smells like this, smells like that, like, I wouldn't know. you know I don't know what nothing smells like ever in my life. So um
Mhm.
some people may, it could be dangerous. That's something that I struggle, because I'm like, I'm by myself, like, I don't know if something's burning up. So whenever, say I'm cooking, I have to stay right there, because
Mhm.
I'm kind of paranoid, like, oh, what happened if I walk away and I don't know if it's something's burning.
Yeah.
um Even in places that say have big measures when it comes to, like, example, I work in a warehouse, so, like, if there's something that's like a gas leak, or you know even something that it might not be detectable right then and there, it could be dangerous.
Yeah.
uh in my for me, per se. So I always try to tell people ahead of time, like, people that I know, like, hey, heads up, if they start talking about smell, like, hey, I'm gonna just give you a heads up, I don't have a sense of smell. And it's like a shock, like, oh, I never, like, what, like.
Mhm.
And so I feel different, because I'm like, I can't smell.
Yeah.
So another thing too, that sometimes with this syndrome is like I said, like, looking young, which I don't mind it, but it has been something that has been um, hard, like, to get jobs. Like, I know it sounds kind of weird, but
Don't
like,
apologize
I've
for your truth. Like
yeah.
that's what you've lived.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Sometimes, like, when I was, say, 16, I was trying to find my first job, and it was like, one day I walked into a fast food place, and I know they were hiring, so I showed up, asked for an application, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, like, we'll call you back," but they didn't even give me anything. I'm like, kind of weird. Or some places too, I walked in and they're like, "Are you even legally able to
mm,
work?" I'm like, yes, like, I mean, that's why I'm walking in to apply.
right.
Even
Right.
even working at a place,
Mhm.
um, there have been people that would walk up to me, like, hey, like, because say I had the shirt on, and say they're looking at me, like, from my back, and then they see me, they're like, are you working here? And I'm like, yeah. And then try to be nice, and they're like, are you legally working? And I'm just like, I just thought, for me, I'm like, that's kind of dumb. I mean, if I'm working here,
Yeah.
yes, I am. Like, at
Right.
first it was kind of funny, but then it just, like, kind of got old. I'm just like,
Mhm.
I mean, it's, and then they'll do that whole comment, like, how old are you? And I tell them, they're like, oh, like, you look young, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm like, oh, being young is a good thing. It is,
Mhm.
but I just kind of get told, hearing it, like, all the time,
Yeah. And
Uh,
almost like you feel like
but
you have to explain your whole life story, like
yeah,
I was like, I don't want to have to tell you that I deal with this rare syndrome that makes me look young. And every time you ask me,
exactly.
and this is what I like, a lot of times we don't know, we're ignorant in like the way that we ask questions because we don't know what we're asking. Like one of the hot topics, would be hope. How old are you? Right. And it's just an innocent question on my part, right? Versus on you, it's just like, dang, like I have to sit here. And every time you ask me that question, I'm reminded that, I have this
Yeah,
syndrome that's different. And
exactly.
what is another innocent question that people may ask you because they're ignorant, because you're married, or because there's
Oh
certain
yeah, yeah.
expectations,
That's
like,
another thing. Yeah.
yeah, can you explain
So,
a little
like,
bit of like some questions that you may get that kind of are ignorant to your situation that may cause like, hey, like I don't appreciate that question, but I get it.
yeah, yeah. So with the symptom as well, I, like, fertility wise. normally with what I have, I can't naturally have kids. Like I can't just, have sexual relationship with my husband, get pregnant. It's not something that my body will do. So in my situation, for me to be able to have a kid, is I have to go to fertility. So, and with fertility as well, it's a chance that yes, I may be lucky and have a kid, or I may go to treatment and there could be a big possibility that I won't be able to. And that comes with money. I mean, it's very expensive to go through fertility, which that's another topic I'll
Yeah.
discuss in a little bit. But one thing that will affect me, that people might not think it might be big, but like I'm married, so in culturally, they will expect, oh, you get married, you have kids immediately. And my point, people might be like, "Oh, why haven't you had kids yet?" Or
Yeah.
when is the kids coming? And I'm just like, it's not that I don't want kids. It's just due to my circumstance. Like people don't know. A, you know, first of all, not everybody wants to have kids.
Hmm.
Second, not everybody wants to have kids in the time frame that everybody wants it to be. And
Hmm.
third, people may be going through something like me or somebody that has fertility issues, that say they were at that moment, trying, and it hasn't been successful. And now you're like, hey, what about that kid?
Right.
Say somebody went through a miscarriage. You don't want to ask, like, hey, when are the kids coming? Like they just recently had a miscarriage. Like
Mhm.
it's very hard. Like me as a person, like I don't like to ask about kids to anybody, because you never know what they're going through. They're going
Mhm.
through something, and now, you mentioned it. You may not say it out of bad manner or anything like that, but it's like a reminder. Like me the other day, for example, like I had posted me and my husband's anniversary on social media, and somebody commented like, where the kids at? I'm just like,
Mhm.
like then, like, couldn't ask like, hey, happy anniversary, like,
Right.
no, it was
And they have
straight to like,
no
where the kids
idea.
at.
That's the crazy
Yeah.
thing, is that they have no idea, and it's like, why do you have to constantly explain your whole life and your
Hmm.
unique struggles because of other people's ignorance, to your
Yeah.
situation? And I think it sucks because, again, they're not asking because they want to hurt you, but it's like,
Yeah.
when it comes to fertility, right? When it comes to body image, when it comes to, the reason why somebody may not be meeting a societal expectation, there's so many reasons why. And so I think we jump too quick into telling people those things, or like, oh, and then in my case, it was like, when are you having your second child? Like, can I
Yeah,
have
you're like, maybe I'm not even ready. Maybe that was my first, that's my only one,
my first and last, which it isn't. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if it's not one thing, it's another. And I think that, like, in our case, like, it's a big contrast, because, like, where you may have had problems with infertility, like, I got pregnant on birth control, and I can't imagine, like, you know how you must feel, like, like, when people constantly compare you, to other
Mm-hmm.
people's expectations. And I think, like, you're a big reason why I'm very sensitive with people, like, asking that question. I'm like, back off. Like,
Yeah.
you don't know
Oh, why
people's
can't you smell?
situation.
Like, that's so, like, I can't control it. Like, sorry, like, that's weird. Well, I know it's weird, but it's like, I can't really control that. Or, the same thing with fertility. Like, I feel like in mentality, in my mind, sometimes I like wonder, like, okay, like, say, I have a kid, right? I end up having one kid, and it's like, I feel like people might be like, oh, when is your second? Or are you gonna have a second? I'm just like, I just feel like it's never enough. Like
Right,
what you do,
right.
um, people have
Or in
to
your case,
just
like,
come
with
to terms to
any,
it.
like, fertility treatment, and you may have multiples, and it's like, oh, how are you going to deal with multiples? Like, how are you guys going
Yeah,
to afford it? How are you, like, it's
yeah. I'm just like, I mean, I did. I knew what I know what the risks are. Like, it's not. I can't control that.
right.
So, say I may have twins. Like, oh, people are gonna, oh, how can you do it? Like, My thing is, at the end of the day, I mean, it's something that God bless me with two. I couldn't, and I have to. Now I have to. Now I have to take care of them.
Hmm.
Um, Sometimes too. Another thing that I can say that I've personally too been told, as well as like, oh, maybe you're just not meant to have kids. Maybe
Mm,
that's something that sometimes hurts as well,
yeah.
because then it makes you think like maybe like maybe now people are saying this, so you're like, am I meant to be, and I don't think that should be the case. I mean, I've met some people that couldn't, they couldn't have kids, and they go through fertility and they're great parents, as well as there's some people that become mothers and not meant to be mothers. I mean, you can't
Correct.
compare
And
that.
you know what? Like, and I love that you brought that up because, it's so frustrating to hear. It's like anytime somebody goes through something bad, it's like maybe you were meant to. Okay, well, I'm struggling in that. That's not the point. The point
Yeah,
is, can you empathize? The point is,
exactly.
can you just relate to me? Like it doesn't make anybody feel better. It's like, oh, I'm depressed. Well, maybe you should just get over it. Or,
Yeah.
in my case, when I went through like the assault, right? Like, oh man, like I was sexually assaulted. Well, maybe we don't know why you're going through things. You were meant to. Am I supposed to see the good? Like later on, you can look back and say, I can grow from that. Like it doesn't have to define
Mhm.
me. But when you're in the rough and when you're going through difficult things, nobody wants to hear maybe it wasn't meant to be, or maybe you were meant to experience this. That is not helpful.
Exactly.
We think it's helpful, but it's not. It's really not. And you're almost like touching a sore bruise and like,
Hmm.
I hope this feels okay.
Yeah. Because I'm like, it's not making it any better by you, like, you're struggling with it, and it's like, maybe you're not meant to be. Like, and you're just like, now you get in your head, like, maybe not. Like, maybe they're right, which I don't want to, of course I came to terms with that. But in that moment, I'm just like, makes you think. And that wasn't the right thing, for them to say. Because I'm like, what happens if you were going through that, and somebody were like, saying maybe you shouldn't, or maybe it's your fault, like, no, it's not. It's
Yeah,
not right. And
right.
so people just don't have, like, again, they're, you know ignorant. They
Yeah.
don't know that that's something that just triggering or might be
Hmm.
affecting somebody. So
Hmm.
it's
And
just what people say, pretty
I'm
much.
assuming the people that have said this to you have kids.
Oh yeah, they have kids.
Right. Like, so you don't know. Like how would
Yeah,
you
I'm
like to be
like,
told, right? Like, like and what's crazy is like on the opposite end, like in my case, my husband looks at me and I get pregnant and it's like, damn, like can I just like and so and it's not helpful. Like it's not helpful regardless of whether somebody like, oh, like you just make kids, you just fertile. Like, okay, like that also has its own, like I'm terrified of sleeping with my husband because I'm gonna get pregnant and on birth control, like that's
yeah.
crazy. And now he's snipped and I'm still like, am I pregnant every time? Like, but people, like, we can't compare apples to oranges. Our situations are different. And so when people talk to somebody that has fertility problems, you don't want to
Mhm.
sit here and make comments. And I don't have fertility. I don't know what that's like. So,
Yeah.
you
Or be
know,
like, "Oh, you're pregnant. Are you pregnant?" Like, I never go up to somebody. They might be going through a miscarriage and they still got a belly going, or they're just
exactly.
overweight. You never know.
Right.
Or maybe they're pregnant, and like I said, some people are pregnant and knowing in their head like, "Oh, I have to take it out because
Yeah.
A, B, and C." Some
Yeah.
people, like, they're going through a miscarriage, they still have the baby, and they have to make a decision, like, do you, like, take it out right now because you have to. You never know, like, you just never know their situation. Maybe they are not pregnant, like I said, and they just have a belly going, they just
Yeah.
look like they're pregnant. I mean, you never know. I That's another thing too, like, I've seen it, like, oh, like, they're touching the belly and they're not even pregnant, uh
Yeah.
awkward.
Yeah. And so, like, and
So
I like to say, like, ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance hurts. Ignorance hurts the other person. Ignorance hurts yourself, right? Like, being ignorant, like, to a situation, like, again, you can have the best intentions. I've said some really dumb things out of ignorance. I'll be the first one to say, right? And like, then like, dang, that came off. Or you look years back and like, damn, I was so like naive and dumb for like, now you take a step back and you understand people's lives look very different. And like in your case, I want to touch a little bit on self-esteem and body image, right? Because I don't think that enough people like, you know, for example, like breasts. You mentioned it a lot, right? Like, I don't have breasts.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have breasts. That was a
Yeah.
big. So, tell me a little bit about your journey with that and like how it impacted your self esteem and like what you did, if anything.
Yeah. So yeah, I with what I had, like I said, I didn't have, like I'm talking about like a little kid, like, little girls flat, when they're flat, like nothing. I didn't have, I was skinny at that. That was something too, like being underweight as well, uh was a big part of that, like the syndrome. Because once I started to go on the hormones and stuff like that, I did grow in height wise. I was like, I think I was like four. I'm gonna say I think I was 4'11", I believe, pre going through treatment, and I'm 5'2". So I grew, I grew some.
Mhm.
Weight wise too, I gained some weight, which I was very. That was something that I was very like excited when I started seeing like weight gain, and some of my family, they're like, oh, like you're too skinny. Like growing up, oh, you're skinny, like you're not eating enough, and looking back, you're like, all along it was because of what I have. Yes, I was picky eating, but at the same time, you know, post treatment, you know, I feel like what I look like now is how I was supposed to look like, if I went
Mhm.
through the previous stage normally. Um, so that was something to this, and as well with no smell thing. Uh, that was a big part too. Like I don't know how to explain that. Like, when somebody doesn't have a sense of smell, you kind of don't know like what is
Mhm.
smell. What is it supposed to be?
Yeah.
So something that like some of my own family members, they'll be like, oh, cooking or something. Like I was cooking and, oh well, it smells like, it smells like egg. Like I'm like, I mean, what is it supposed to be?
What
Like,
does the
aren't
egg
you,
smell
that
like?
I assume when you're cooking it's supposed to smell like food,
Right,
you know?
right.
So smelling good. I mean, no, I've never had nobody tell me that I smell bad, but I'm just saying, like, in my head, I'm like, what I put on. Like one day I was, at my grandmother's house, and when I was younger, and I used to sleep over and say I'm not big in spraying anything on me. I do it just for the sake of others because I don't know what it smells like.
Mhm.
But say, in my grandmother's house, her perfumes. I don't know if it smells good, but one day I sprayed it because my grandmother told me, like, oh, we're
Mhm.
gonna go out, put this on, and so I sprayed it, and then I went home, and my mom was like, oh, it smells like, it doesn't smell good. I'm like, okay, I appreciate it, but I don't know,
I don't
you
know.
know.
Yeah. Like, but this
So
is what I mean by ignorance is like people don't know. And let's talk about weight, right? Like, oh
yeah,
my gosh. If you don't hear it in Hispanic families in a conversation, it's every you're too fat, you're too
you're
skinny.
too
When are you
skinny.
gonna lose weight? You're eating too much, you're eating too little. And I can only imagine in your case that it was just like, you're always too skinny. It's because of this, it's because of that. And it's like, no, it's
Yeah, like
I
you.
have a syndrome that I
Yeah,
don't gain weight like everybody else. Like, so elaborate on that a little bit.
yeah. Like growing up, I was skinny. I was always underweight, and so when I went through the stage, I started doing the hormone stuff. I started to gain weight, and then there was a point where I did it for, let me see, that pretty much my whole high school. So it took it literally took from ninth grade. I started the treatment, and then sophomore, not sophomore, senior year is when I first had my first menstrual cycle, and so uh, when that happened, I was like, and I saw it, I was like, kind of like, what is this, And then so like, uh, I was scared because I'm like, why am I bleeding? Like the doctor
Mhm.
said that it was gonna be, I mean, there is no estimated time, but I thought it was like a longer time for me to
Mhm.
have it. So I was like, and so I told my at that time I remember it. I was in school. I was having like, now I know, but I was having cramps. And I'm like, what the
Mhm.
heck? Like, why am I hurting? And so I went. I remember I went to the. I went to the. I grabbed. I went home, and then next thing you know, I went to use the restroom, and I looked down. I'm like, what the heck is that? And I was actually scared. I was like, what the heck? I called
Mhm.
I remember I was at my grandmother's house, and I called like to my mom, and she came. My grandma was the one that ended up coming, and she's like, oh, it's just your period. Uh, and my mom too, and I'm just like, are you sure? Like, I need you to, I need to call the doctor, like, because I don't know, I didn't know what it's
Yeah.
supposed to be, and like I said, in my mindset, I thought like, oh, it's gonna like, I thought it was like further down.
Mhm.
Uh, so it was just seemed like, oh, it's just your period type of thing, and then of course, my mom walked me through the, like use this. But the thing is with me was, uh, later on, I had moved to, like a couple years later, I had moved to Florida, and while I was there, I think in that time frame was the time that I weighed the most, which
Mhm.
I was good. I was like, I'm looking good, I'm feeling good.
Mhm.
I think I was like, but in somebody's view, they're like, oh, that's not fat or anything, but
Mhm.
some people notice the difference, of course, because if you knew me when I was super skinny
Yep.
to that time, they're like, there's a difference. Like, oh, you might want to slow down, or hey,
Mhm.
you look like you're getting thick, or like, but in my head, I'm like, I feel good. I was fine.
Mhm.
And how long it took me to get to that point, to be told like, hey, you might want to slow down, or you're not gonna, like, once you get to this point, you're not
Mhm.
gonna lose weight. So I'm just like, so now I'm overweight, which I
Yeah.
wasn't. But you're like, hey, you're getting to that point that you may not lose anymore. You're getting to that age that, once you reach a certain weight, it's gonna be hard to go down. Like, but in my head, I'm like, I was fine. I was not overweight. It just, the way I was looking like was different. So now it's
Yep.
like, hey. So I'm like, so if I am skinny, it's a problem, and if I gain some weight, it's a problem. But I'm like,
Yeah.
that's another ignorant thing too to say.
Right.
Um, maybe that's why, like some people gain weight, and it's like maybe that's what they want. That's
Right.
what they want to. That's what they wanted to achieve. In my
Yeah.
case, it took me a long time to gain weight.
And let's
Uh,
and the impact on your self-esteem, it seems like it didn't even come from you saying, I'm not good enough, I'm not this. It came from other people's comments and other
oh
people's
yeah,
like questions that were ignorant or, things like that, because like you're a very bubbly
it made you.
person.
It made you question yourself, what other people said.
Yeah.
um, Made you think like, oh, maybe, cause like I said, when I was in school, looking like I was, say I would hear people compare, like you to me, like
Hmm.
you were very. A lot of guys wanted to be with, like, oh, she's curvy, oh, she has big boobs,
Yeah.
big butt. I'm just like, why is it about that?
Right.
Why is it about her bodily figure? Like, she's amazing. She has great personality. Why are you looking at that? So when people are comparing me to you, or comparing me to other girls that were, had a good body, which, what
Mhm.
does a good body look like?
Right.
Let's define that.
Yeah.
But people were like, oh, guys were like, oh, like, you have to have a booty, or like, when people ask guys, like, what are you looking for in a woman? A lot
Yes.
of times guys would mention, oh, she has to have big boob, oh, she has to have a booty. And when I heard that, when I used to hear that, I'm like, well, I don't have that. So that literally just caused my for everybody when that was in my mind. and
Yeah.
that gets to you. That hits your self-esteem, because first you know that you're not the same as everybody else,
Yep.
because what I have, and then everybody in society is labeling, oh, you have to look like this,
Yeah.
and you're not. You don't look like that. So it's like, so does that make me less as of a human, or?
Exactly. Exactly. And I kind of want to highlight that because you and I have a great relationship, I would say. I think.
Yeah,
Correct me if I'm wrong. Right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
You're
you
like
were that I used to go to you a lot, because like, I feel like you understood. You understood
right.
me, not knowing. I mean, you don't have what I have, but you understood, as in, you were like pretty much my a shoulder to cry on. Like, hey,
Yeah.
this is how I feel, because I felt like some people in my family too. I just felt like I couldn't go to them, because I felt like uh, I was going to be judged for
Right.
how I was feeling.
Yeah.
So one thing that a lot of people don't know, some people closer to me do know, but going back to my self-esteem, uh, one thing that I did do to myself, and I may have got judged for it,
Mhm.
but one thing that I decided to do for myself, not because of people or talk me into it, but like,
Mhm.
I had a breast augmentation. Of course, I didn't do it like, oh my God, it's humongous. I just wanted to
Mhm.
have something to me, like something
Mhm.
that made me feel better. So
Mhm.
I did do it a couple of years ago. I think this was my third year. No, yeah, second or third year around there.
Mhm.
It's gonna be the when I had my breast done. But imagine how I was already an adult, so I'm married at that. So
Yeah.
I had some people, oh, why are you doing that? Or, oh, you look beautiful. Like, I'm not saying I'm not beautiful. It's just because you get something like that doesn't mean you less value yourself. Like,
Right.
and I
Again,
had some
from
people.
people that have big breasts, I'm assuming, or people that
Exactly.
right? It's
Like,
like you don't know.
yeah. So they're like, oh, well. So I'm just like, but you have that, you have that. So let me do it, you know
Mhm.
and let me experience what it feels like. I wanted to look better.
No, you
Not that
can't.
I
You
didn't
gotta
look
do
better.
something for yourself. You gotta do something because
Mhm.
everybody else wants you to do it, right? Like you
Yeah,
can't want breasts because like, oh, I just want to feel good because I just want to have that. No, you have to do it because oh, your husband wants you to get boobs, or like, oh,
yeah,
you want other people to. I'm like, or hold on, hear me out. Maybe I can have something that I want to have just because I want to
exactly.
feel better about myself in this way. And not to say that you have bad self esteem. It's like
Yep.
I think that you carry yourself very well, considering the circumstances like that, everybody, all the pressure that you've received from other people for things that weren't your fault, like all of it. And I like to like highlight our relationship a little bit because we were compared a lot, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
growing up in school, growing up like with our bodies, or like growing up with like, oh, Josie has a lot of boyfriends, and and so
Yeah,
like there was a whole nother side to that, and I'm like, I really didn't have a lot of boyfriends, guys. Like I talked
yeah,
to people, it's like, but there's two sides to the coin. But I love that it never impacted our relationship, and it's possible to have your own unique struggles and be compared to somebody and still be like, you know what, I don't care, but our relationship is more important than that.
oh yeah, yeah. Because not just people, but even people in our family, you know, compared. Like, you know, everybody, like, she's this age, and you look like this, or
Mhm.
so it's like, or everybody in our family, not necessarily judged like body wise, but uh I myself would see everybody in our family who was very curvy, and I'm just like something's wrong, because I'm like, but maybe I was just not meant to be curvy. That it is what it is.
Mhm.
Right now, I mean, I feel good. I mean, I have a little boot. I got a booty.
A little something.
I got a little shape again. I got a little shape, like, so I appreciate. I just like the journey that it took for me. Like, it took a long time to get to where I am. I mean,
Mhm.
I still look young, but it is what it is. Um, but I'm just very grateful that, the process. I just, I guess in my going life, I haven't really realized it, but maybe too, I may be able, with what I have, I can help other people. Maybe I just need to see what I can do to help other women not necessarily have what I have. It'll be great to know people.
Yeah.
It's so rare that you never can see women that have what I have. Because coming to like healthcare, sometimes I've been to doctors uh, outside of what's it called? Because when I first started, it was like a pediatric,
Mhm.
and so whenever I became an adult, I had to go through. I have to see a totally different doctor. Now it's an adult and somebody that I never seen. So going through from this doctor that knew exactly what I had, explained, knew I can tell him, hey, this is what's happening. To switching to another doctor, they have no clue. They're like, oh, so what do you have? Why?
Mhm.
For example, when they'll ask, oh, when uh, do you take birth control? Like, yes, not because of that reason, like not because I'm not trying to have kids. It's because I have this. Or there's times too that, when I don't take my hormones, I don't have a period. So it's
Mhm.
like, when was your life cycle? I'll tell them if it's like in a certain amount of time that it's like, oh, is it because you're pregnant? Like, no, I'm not pregnant. Oh, how do you know?
Yes.
How are you certain? Say when I
Yeah.
have to get imaging done. Oh, how do you know? Like, I know because I know because of what I have.
Yeah.
Or when I try to explain to them what I have, uh, they're like, so what is that? And I'm just
Mm.
like, you're supposed to be a doctor. Like, not
Yeah.
everybody know because it's there,
Yeah.
but don't judge, because of that. And so it's just another thing with what I have too, with fertility. Sometimes I even question that because I'm like, there's some things in the healthcare system that insurance covers for that is not necessary, but with something that's like medical, why do I
Yeah.
don't need help? I get help for that.
Yes.
It's
And
not
it's
my
not
fault.
covered on the insurance
It's
plan.
not covered. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like, why? It's
Yes.
something that it's not that is out of my control.
Right.
So
Like, how
that's
is that
something.
not like a medically necessary? Like, if I want to have a
Yeah.
kid, I have a condition that doesn't allow me to. And I think I kind of want to touch on that a little bit because there is a big, big, big thing, with like healthcare and fertility, and like even religion, and how like they're like, oh, we won't cover those because, it goes against the natural order, I guess, like of God, right? Like,
Yeah.
no. And it's just like, wait a minute, like what if that could be used to bring life into this world, in a different way? Like, why do we have to demonize what we don't understand? And it's
Mhm.
like, it is possible that you have the syndrome, right? But it could also be possible for you to have kids, and we have the access, to be able to have that. And, like,
Yeah.
I can only imagine, how has that impacted you? Like, I guess I know you mentioned God earlier, and you said that, like, I guess this is the path God has me on. Like, how do comments like that impact, like, how you view God and, like, how you view your situation?
Yeah. I mean, because I even had, whenever I had, my breast on, some people would say like God made you with small boobs, so you should appreciate that. So that means that you don't appreciate God, that God made you that way. I'm just like, no. I mean, it's available. It was
Mhm.
available for me to do it. I don't think that per se that it's bad. Uh, Depending on in my point of view, I guess it just depends on. I don't even know how to justify it because you do it how you want. But say uh, you do it because it depends on, like, say if you're addicted to plastic surgery. Okay, I get it. That's bad.
Mhm.
But if you do it like this is it,
Mhm.
I'm just doing it for me. Like, it's available.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
think
think
what you're saying
it's.
is like what matters is the heart behind it. Like why you're
Yeah,
doing it, and like, okay, I want it because I just want to feel, good. It doesn't mean that I like hate God or hate myself.
yeah. Oh, I
Like
don't
why does
appreciate it.
one
Oh,
thing
why did he
mean
make me this
another?
way?
Like I could just love God and also want boobs. Like what? I
Yeah,
don't
it's like,
understand.
for example, one example, like, okay, so take it, you know, back then you were meant to just, I mean, back then you don't have birth control. You had kids until your body just couldn't have any more kids. So now you have the access to have birth control, or now have or get a surgery because you don't have kids. So does that, you're alternating it. So
Why is it okay
is
in
it
one
bad?
situation and not okay in another? I agree. I
Exactly.
agree with what
Yeah,
you're saying
exactly.
100%. I'm like, you want to take it back and say, like, this is the natural order of things. Don't take birth control. Don't go to the doctor because you were meant to be sick
Yeah.
and die, right? If you have an illness and if you're sick,
Or like overweight people, they get the surgery, they alter their stomach
right?
to lose weight. So,
Why is it bad
I
that you
mean,
want boobs, but that's okay?
yeah, exactly.
Why is it bad that you want boobs, but it's okay to take birth control to not have kids or get a
Yeah, or people, there's
hysterectomy?
some people that lose, like, they were overweight and they lose a lot of they lose a lot of weight where they have saggy skin.
Hmm.
You know, it's it interrupts their daily life. So
Yeah.
now they're taking that. So I'm like, so how is that okay? But because I want to have, I don't think it's a bad thing.
Hmm.
Like you said, it's just the thought behind it. Yes, there's a limit. Like, if you're doing something and it's gonna harm you, uh, in some way, then I guess that's something that needs to be evaluated. But if it's just like, I want to do it because I want to feel better. I want to, some clothes, like for me, because I didn't have anything, sometimes the clothes didn't fit. Like, it might be fitting here, but over here was like, I don't like it. Can I just let me add a little bit something?
Hmm.
And it just boosted my self esteem.
Yeah.
But yeah, fertility, this was very, very big. I just wish that it had, more options, like say that the insurance covered, or I'm not saying I'll cover everything, but like give me some, give me like a coverage that is reasonable,
Yeah. How much
because
does
a
a
lot of times
fertility
fertility,
treatment cost?
I go, I don't know, it like ranges. I'm sure I've heard, like, some people, some places that I only got to one place, and what they say, like, oh, if you do it here, this is like the most affordable, because like if you go to another city, it goes up. What I've heard, I think, well, the last time, it was a few years ago when I had looked into it, it was like, I think it was like 20, 30,000, something like that.
Yeah.
And that's not even including like medication, because uh they want to do like testing, like ultrasounds, when they do a certain, like, you have to do certain procedures, and then they have to check on that, do labs, once you are that, just to the point, like, once you are pregnant, then they have to do more testing, and then I guess from there, then you go through regular um OBGYN, but it has to be like specific to
And it may not
fertility.
even work. That's just one round, right? It
Exactly.
may
Like,
not even
you
work.
wasted all that money.
Yeah. And that's the this is I love that you're being open about this because we talk about, okay, health insurance doesn't cover it, you know, and I have this societal expectation. People ask me, when am I going to have a kid? You got 20 or $30,000 to dish out minimum, right, for it to
Exactly.
maybe not work, right? And then
Exactly.
we talk
So
about, like, share. Go ahead.
yeah, that's another struggle of mine too. I'm just like, that's another that you, like you mentioned, like, some people might say that knowing what I have, and I'm just
Mhm.
like you said, do you have that money, and guarantee me that I'm gonna be good. Like,
Yeah.
I pay this amount of money, and still, and say I don't end up having a
Oh,
kid. Now I just spend all that money.
and we didn't even touch on like how Kallmann syndrome affects your bones. And even
Oh
if
yeah.
you are pregnant, right? And how your body has
Hmm.
to change, how painful it would be.
Yeah, imagine that. Because
So
in my syndrome too, like, the syndrome itself has so many stuff that I sometimes forget. But Kallman syndrome as well, like you never know, but like with hormones, it affects your bones. So in people that have what I have, uh, you have a high risk of like osteoporosis, which you could break your bone easily, like simple stuff. In my case too, recently actually I had surgery on my hip because I had fell, and it's like now I had to get surgery to fix that. And so you have to be very careful in anything that you do with, not to hurt yourself because you have a high risk. And it's very interesting to me because, like I said, I didn't know until I had it. I'm like, I didn't know that hormones, it's very big on your bone, like how strong it is, because it becomes very brittle. That's why whenever women go through menopause, they experience bone issues. In my case, I experienced it
Yeah.
very early because of what I have, and
Yeah.
don't even realize it. And people, when I've gone to the doctor too, they'll mention that word like menopausal state. I'm not I because they compare it to that because of the fact of what I have. Now I have to be on hormones like pretty much the rest of my life, so that it can maintain my body, as in like the bones. Even though right now it's like I said, I have osteoporosis, but and some parts of my body already has arthritis, but for the most part, like I said, I have to be on birth hormones,
Mhm.
and so that way I can maintain parts that are important in my body that it's important for a woman,
Yeah.
which is something different too. Not every woman, once they go through the menopause stage, they just go through the menopause stage. Me, I have to continue taking the medicine, so it's
Right.
like I really don't want to. And there
Yeah.
has been some times too in my life that I have stopped the medication because I'm like, maybe if I, since I've taken it for this long a time, maybe my body's already used to it, but no.
Yeah.
And some of the doctors will be like, you have to take it because it's important.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay. I just thought
Yeah.
that because I took it for a long time, maybe it just
Yeah.
happens.
And it's something you have
So,
to deal with for the rest of your life. And I think,
hmm
people are just ignorant of that and how it impacts, you and your relationships. And I love how you've been really open about all the different aspects of, what this meant to you and your journey, and how you've grown and your self-esteem and you're into your own person. And so if there's any one thing that you would like to tell the audience that they can take away, from our time today regarding the syndrome or anything we talked about, what would it be?
I would say, you know, every woman is beautiful, no matter, what they might be going through. Um, if you see something, men or female, if you feel like there's something different, you know, first, I mean, if it's something like medical, whatever, like make sure you get it checked. Because, like I said, in my case, I was diagnosed like late in life. So if there's something that you see that you're struggling with, I mean, also too mentally, you're not alone. Like I think you should get that help. You're not different. You may be different, but that doesn't mean you're not a human. So
Mhm.
I was gonna stand up by that and whatever. Like I said, I just think everybody's unique in their own way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it. And I love you have a great heart. And I think that what we didn't touch about what's the importance of having a support system, right? And so briefly, can you let people know like how important that is and how that important has it been for your journey?
Yeah, so uh, I can say that I had a support system. Like I'm grateful that I had my family. Um, Something that I didn't, that maybe I think it would have been grateful for me um, overall. I've never gone to like say counseling or so I think that would have been a great thing for me in my case, going through what I went through, because it can affect your mental state. But I think in our time, like growing up, it was like, be going to counseling or going to psychology. It was bad.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's what I thought in my head, that it was like, oh no, you can't do that. Like you're mentally not right, or just because you're mentally right. I mean, it's a big thing. People didn't know at that time that it's not bad to go, to counseling if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a big thing that I think people should have in their mind, that it is okay to go to counseling. It is okay to be evaluated to a psychologist if it's available. It's
Mm-hmm.
there to help you. And not a lot of people know that, oh, I'm crazy. Like, no, it's not that you're crazy. It's you just need a break in your mental state.
You're
So
human. You go through things.
yeah.
You hurt, and you need somebody that has a different perspective to help you, in that process. And so, yeah, like I love it. And so, everybody, this is Luz. She wanted to highlight the experience that she's had with Kallman syndrome. If you've had Kallman syndrome, she is a good resource. There's communities that we're going to have on the Zyari app and the website, so you don't feel alone. And I love the openness, and I appreciate you taking the time out to do this today. So thank you.
Thank you. Glad to be here.